Ready to start? Everybody ready? Okay, welcome to tonight's meeting, April 29th, 2024. Welcome to the City Council study session for April 29th. We thank you for coming and would like to remind all in attendance that our meetings are subject to the rules of decorum that are posted inside the chamber doors. These rules are in effect while our meetings are in session, as well as during breaks and transition between meetings. We want to be sure all feel welcome and remind all there's an expectation that no attendee shall disrupt this meeting and that threats and intimidation are prohibited. Please, no attendee shall engage in audible expressions of support or opposition for any speaker. Signs and placards are prohibited, and all attendees shall remain seated in the seats provided, not in the aisles, nor shall the doorways be blocked. City Council reports. I'll start with you folks online. Councilor Azadi?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
I just had the one request for a proclamation for Maternal Mental Health Awareness Month. The reason why I think we should specify on this, because I know we have the mental awareness already there, but this one specifically addresses the unique challenges and support needs of mothers, which are distinct and merit dedicated attention. So that's why I think if we want to improve those health outcomes, which are very specific to that population of mothers, this is something that we should start doing. That's why I'm asking for support.
Anything else?
No, so I'd like to know if I got enough, I guess, a poll.
I don't know who answered because
I didn't see it in time. I'd be supportive of it.
I don't know how many you had.
I had two. I had you and Councillor DeMont.
I would be supportive as well.
I would be supportive too.
And you said yes. Okay, you've got your 4.
Thank you.
Councilor Ireland?
Hello, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
So I attended the historical board meeting this week, and they talked about the grants they're trying to get. One for, I think I've told you before about surveying homes that haven't changed much in our community over the years. And also they're trying to get a mini grant to identify cultural resources, populations in our city that they haven't studied much, like Native Americans and the Hmong population. They're also trying to get their members on board to do the tours that are coming up. The first one on June 8th. And I guess the board is going to be the tour guide, so they're learning the history that they need to know to do those tours. And also I attended the Food for Hope banquet, which was a nice event, and it had a good turnout, so that was good to see. And that's all I have for this week.
Thank you. Councilor Hott?
Yeah, on Wednesday, I went to the Westminster High School. They were having a district-wide science fair, so all the kids who had won on at their school, so it was elementary, middle school, high school, they all were there. They had a couple other events too, but I hung out with the science fair kids. It was fun seeing how excited they were to present their science fair project, and that was just a lot of fun. And I actually ran into our Parks and Rec director while I was there, Tomas. But yeah, so that was really fun. And then I just want to make sure. I'm sure we'll do this during Councilor DeMott's time. I assume you have a CNR update, maybe. I just want to. There's no meeting.
There's a meeting this week.
Yes, there is a meeting this week. So if it doesn't get brought up because there is a new meeting this week, we should probably make sure that we're still on the same page as we were last time that we took a poll, because that was a month ago.
Councilor Carmelia?
I was also going to start with discussion around the CNR. I'll just contribute all the information that I've gathered, just doing my own homework to catch up to speed on what so many others here already know. But as I said, a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I spoke to Kurt Morrison at the Attorney General's office, and I just want to recap that essentially their advice was that they are happy to be advisors, and they're happy to be provide counsel, but essentially at the state level, they can't do a whole lot more than that, and they really are not going to get involved, and they're working on that noise aviation bill, but that really doesn't pertain a whole lot to what we're working on right now at the city level. And I want to say that out loud to clarify just the confusion that was in the air around that piece. And I also talked to Eric Butler at the county, and he was very informative, and he provided me that copy of the actual contract that I sent out to everyone, and that was really helpful for me to read through. And he emphasized the value in the existing noise roundtable as it stands. And I should add that both the attorneys I talked to were really proud of our decision as a city to remain a stakeholder, just to hear the proceedings as they've gone on. And so they both emphasized how important it is to remain at the table, just because in the case that it does dissolve, we don't know what could be forthcoming. And so it's so important to hold on to what we have while we have it, because nothing is promised once things are dissolved, if that happens. And then some topics I ended up talking about with the county was if it dissolves, what then? And so, I just wanted to emphasize, that my priority is to ensure that we remain at the table one way or another. And again, they emphasize that that is not promised. And so I just want to make that clear. They emphasized, that the folks who currently are in litigation might not want to join. Jeffco itself might not want to rejoin, right? These are all matters that are up in the air, and so I think that's important to hear out loud too. And if such a thing were to happen, as I'm saying again and again, there's so many unknowns, and the thing is they can't provide us clear answers because they don't know, essentially. And so that's also important to make clear, is no one really has the answers. My priority has been, again, can we regather? I think it's important, one way or another, if we dissolve, to already lay the groundwork and have the conversations going right now with our other communities. So I hope that we're all reaching out and trying to figure out what the next steps are if such a thing is to happen at this coming meeting. And so I just want to emphasize that the current route that I think we should be on is, if we are, what would our next steps be? And I think we should focus on how do we get the community more well represented if we are to rebuild an IGA. How do we change maybe the focus of the power on the FAA's side? It turns out that maybe it's not true that they create all the rules. We could have some more input on that possibly. But again, none of this is a given. And so I know that some of us here know that, but I think it's really important that the community understands that our decision makes a big impact. So I just wanted to mention all the different ideas that have been floating around. And then I, in other news, participated in this week's Water Cat. We had our second Citizens Advisory meeting for the water plant. There was excellent participation, lots of turnout. We discussed both positive ideas around the plant for folks to give input on, and different risks that they saw. A lot of the risks that were mentioned were mainly focused around wildlife and our open space, and so I just appreciate how much emphasis the community puts on protecting that, which is really great. And so the team was very responsive and ensured us that they are working to do everything they can to mitigate any real harm. So that's really great news. And then they also the city staff outlined the plan for the water plant over the next year, which is really ambitious. And so I'm excited. I'm really proud of them. They're creating like a really tight timeline on this project. And essentially it's 3 projects in parallel. It's not one, right? There's the project for the inbound raw water, and that's going to be a whole project in and of itself. And then there's the project for the water plant. And then there's the project for the clean outbound water. And so those 3 projects have their own design phases, own build phases, and own delivery. And so anyway, I'm really proud of how well that went. Our staff did fantastic, and the community really turned out and did a great job too. So that's going well. And then I also attended the Food for Hope banquet with Councillor Ireland. That was a fantastic event, and I was excited to learn more about what they do. I hope to be more involved as a volunteer in the future.
Thursday, I attended with the mayor the Rotary Foundation's roast of Pam Swanson. That was a lot of fun. That's in conjunction with CASA, so raising money for CASA is always good in my mind. So I appreciate that Rotary continues to partner with them. Then Saturday, I went down to historic Westminster and visited what was going on down there. Saw a lot of our staff in a lot of full parking lots. So I actually had a hard time. I had to circle around Valeni's once in order to be able to find a parking spot. So I appreciate all the staff who put their time out to participate in that over the weekend. Since it's been brought up, the CNR is this week, and so I remain, like we heard from you, that I think that we should stay. I had a really long conversation over the weekend, or last week, I think Friday, with a community member who's also a pilot who had in the past told me, that he felt that we should leave, and he wanted to explain his feelings on it. And I thought it was interesting to hear from a member of the pilot community, and really his complaint is that it's frustrating, much like we have said, to have one member of that group be able to just throw everything away and not be able to get anything done, because it does sound like there is a desire from the pilot community to be able to work with the rest of the community on solutions. So I think in one way I feel his pain, but in another way, I'd let him know why I feel strongly the way I do, that we should stay at the table. I had shared with you all what I had found as far as what, how CNRs are made up. I thought that was good reading. And if it moves forward, I think that there's room for us to be able to amend things and be able to come up with some of these other alternatives. And I think that's going to be easier to do if it remains. I think that it's uncertain that you would be able to get everybody back to the table if it doesn't. And just because some of the folks left, if it succeeds to remain as a group past Thursday, we left once and came back. So I would hope that people come back to the table, because otherwise we're not going to make any progress for the community. So I stick to that. The only other thing that I would say is the meeting has been moved for this week, and it's now from 4 to 5, and the reason is they are right after their hosting, and they felt that it was important that we have this meeting and not postpone it. But they also think that they're doing the public portion of the interviews for the new airport director on Thursday. So that's open to the public, and they really wanted us all to be able to attend that. It sounds like it's kind of open house, much like we did with our city manager open house. So it sounds like each candidate will have a half an hour to speak, and then it'll be open to the public to be able to talk to them and ask questions. So if you guys are free, that goes from 5 to 8 in the same room that we do the round table. So it'll be round table, and then it'll go straight into that event. So both very important things for the airport, I think. So we wanted to make sure that neither of them were postponed.
Councilor, may I respond real quick to one piece? So to clarify on that question about, so I asked specifically the question of whether the rules could be changed if we created a new IGA. If a member, for example, like Boulder had pulled out, could something like that be changed? And the answer to that was no, that those, if we rebuilt a new IGA and it was successfully built, it would still be under FAA rules. And so when I said, could some of the dynamics be different? Yes, some of the dynamics could be different, and we would likely get hopefully a more involved or new FAA rep, as is the wish of many residents I've heard. However, their FAA rules would still apply, and that would still be the case. The FAA would still want full consensus, and that would not change.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, and I'm glad that you clarified that, because I think some of the opportunities that I've heard that I'd like us to chase down if the group stays is around what the current chair, Devin from Broomfield, had mentioned, and that's about potentially having work groups. And currently my understanding is our IGA doesn't allow that. And from my understanding anyway, and his information that he had said was from the FAA, which we would have to validate this. I've heard a lot of things from members of the round table that, they say FAA says this, and then we hear something different. So it definitely should be validated, but that the FAA said that is something that other CNRs do, and that it was something to do with our IGA, which I didn't fully understand what about our IGA wouldn't allow that. But that could be opportunity for, small work groups to be able to actually work on solutions, much like we've seen the member from Superior do. So I think there's other opportunities and learnings from the last, handful of years that we could take forward, and hopefully the group does that, and whatever, if it remains. So.
I'll just keep
Mayor
going
Pro
on that. So I too had spoken with community members as well as the county. And I certainly have gone back and forth over, do we stay or do we go? And I have to say, I am still of the mind after many conversations and just trying to flesh this out that it seems like staying for now is the way to go, because even if we do, even if something new comes along, I mean, yes, like I just, long story short, want us to be involved for our community, and to ensure that we're working with our neighbors and with the county constructively. So for me, that means engaging in what's available to engage within, and if that changes, then we engage in that. I would hope that if we go into amending the IGA, I'm hoping that we can have staff start to note down that, for one, potential amendments could include establishing smaller work groups. I think the scope of the CNR could expand a little bit. I think it's a little on the narrow side with respect to noise and operations, that potentially there's some other conversation that we can at least create a venue for. And in terms of, other environmental impacts. And I think also maybe some, looking at the representation on that board, if there could be some stakeholders from the community, or if work groups can engage stakeholders in a more meaningful ways. I would like for us to be able to integrate that into it. And just thinking about the pilot industry, or the industries that are taking advantage of the airport, that could also be a great, input to have on the IGA. So there's all those things. And I think for some of the CNRs, the FAA representative can be more involved and attend more often, so that might also be something that we could request of the FAA as well.
Just on that note, and I hate to belabor this point, because we've spent a tremendous amount of time on this, and I know we have so little control over it, but I think that's where also I would hope that there's some better leadership out of each of the members of the CNR, because I think that some of the challenge and this is my own perspective, of people have been pretty nasty to some of those staff members and members of the FAA who have shown up. So whether it's the one that we have, and whether people are rightfully disappointed or wrongfully, we do need to try to keep some civility in that group. Otherwise, just even working with our partners, you're not gonna be able to collaborate if we're being nasty with each other, whether that's staff of the airport, our staff, or otherwise. So, I hope that whatever goes forward, that there's some better leadership from each of the members in that CNR.
Maybe there need to be some ground rules written into the IGA.
Wouldn't disagree.
So, there's that. Let's see what else. Last week there was also the Front Range Passenger Rail Board meeting, where there was just discussion about whether or not the project itself was ready for going to the ballot to ask for a % sales tax to pay for the service. And there's just so many questions around it. I don't know, I would say the board is split right now in terms of, let's wait or let's go. I think there's a recognition that there are a lot of communities, including us, who would like to have better integration into the line and the existing station, or the stations that they have currently proposed. So they have an uphill job on that one. Then thank you, Counselor Carmelia, for attending the morning session of Dr. Oh, I know, like every moment. So Counselor Carmelia attended the morning session of the Dr. Cog retreat, and then we high-fived, tag team, and then I got the afternoon. So I appreciate that you attended that portion, which was focused on transportation and senior services. The afternoon was focused on the regional housing needs assessment and kind of the next step to create a strategy. And so they have employed Eco Northwest, who have done actually all across the nation and into the west to Midwest primarily, establishing structures for regional housing coordination, particularly through councils of government. So they're looking at different regional ways to coordinate affordable housing creation and monitoring and support. So they provided an overview of different structures and asked for input on that. And then they also had a little workshop session focused on outcomes. So I guess more to come on that, but I think that they'll be, working to figure out what is Dr. Cog's role and how can they help us. And there was a lot of sentiment geared toward, tell us how. And there's and in calibrating to different sizes of communities, because some are well equipped with staff and understanding or land or money or whatever the case may be, and there's this full gamut of need and ability. So it's a significant task to take on, but I think that they can give us toolkits and some type of structure that we can all share in. And one thing that at least my table focused on was prioritization. So we have 216,000 units to come up with, in the next 10 years, and 67% of them need to be between 0 and 60% of the area median income. And so if we can really, instead of dispersing efforts, if we can really focus in on something as a region and really make a dent somewhere, I think that would be really helpful. So we'll see.
Jam-packed day.
Yeah, good stuff.
Should I follow up really quick?
Yeah.
Okay, so the one at Dr. Cog, which I was also at, it turns out, we got 2 proposals that morning, and one was very interesting. It was about expanding Dr. Cog's influence into the health industry, health insurance industry, which is very interesting, and it would be focused on, it was called a Health Equity Learning Collaborative, focused on community health integration, and apparently Dr. Cog already has the staff, the resources, everything it needs to go out into the community and assess folks' I forget the exact term, it's essentially their economic well-being, how environmental impacts are affecting their health, such as, their wealth and where they're living, et cetera. And so that was really interesting. There was quite I can give a lot more detail on that if needed, but it was a very interesting plan that they could possibly roll out. And then the second proposal we heard was around Dr. Cog being a regional transit authority, and that would, provide the area with another means of making larger decisions on transit. And there were a few different ways that we could focus that, such as we could do it issue-based. If we decided to become a regional transit authority, it could be focused on like air quality, for example, or transit or safety, or it could be focused monetarily through just ensuring that we do projects that are through sales or use tax or vehicle regulation fees or visitor benefit taxes, et cetera. So there was a whole wide gamut of proposed options and plans with that as well. So I think that there's a lot that Dr. Cog is proposing right now and in the middle of, and I think we have a lot more to come and a lot of decisions to come. But good to have an idea of what they're up to.
Last Tuesday, I was at Broomfield Chamber. They meet at Zoe's on Tuesdays, and I don't know if it's just one Tuesday a month. Anyway, I know that they had put out a schedule for everybody to pick a date, and Tuesday was my date to go. So talked with them, and They just want, since we butt up and they have chamber members here, and I know Westminster has chamber members over there, just good to talk to them and get to meet folks that were there. Attended the Citizens Fire Academy graduation. They had a great class. People always enjoy that, and it's always a fun time to hear what people's favorite things were. Had a NADA retreat Friday, and we're looking at transportation there. And of course, we have the Broomfield and us in Westminster, and then the Adams County folks. So we have robust conversation when it comes to rail. Everybody has an opinion, but I have to say people are staying focused with not just being negative, but how it should work, and people do recognize this, our corridor, for what should have been fast tracks, is like being blown past. So they get that, even though they know they're getting blown past too. So it was just good to have conversation, not just heels set in stone. Went to the roast for Pam Swanson. I still laugh when I think of some of the things people had to say. Mr. Duffy is always so funny, and Mr. McCoy, over some of his comments, I can just be in the kitchen, start laughing. So it was just great, and I loved the silent auction and all the things they did for CASA to earn money, and been thinking a lot and talking to people with CNR. Knew it would probably come up again tonight, and here's my thoughts. Broomfield is the only city that has done the process to leave CNR. We have others that for 2 to 3 months have been almost bullying tactics that they're going to leave, but they have not signed the memorandum. They have not sent it in. They just come to meetings complaining. And not that they don't have good thoughts, but they have showed no action. And so I believe we stick through it. We're getting to meet new airport candidates Thursday night also. I've been thinking about because people have brought up the work, how can we have, almost like our boards and commissions, how can you have some other things going on? And what makes sense in that is we know that the roundtable was meant for the noise, but we know that part of the problem is you've got the lead issue, you've got other issues that didn't fall under here, but people kept trying to put it in that bucket and it doesn't belong. So if you have, because Jeffco, and it is the airport in Jefferson County, runs it, it's not that these other things shouldn't have a way to vet and have conversations. So how do you do that? And especially with the lead issue, CDPHE is the one that has to be at the table. I think you get the local legislators, pick 1 or 2 that can have the time in the off-season to be able to attend those meetings with community. The community has the power with those state legislators, because the state legislators are the ones that tell CDPHE what they should and shouldn't be doing. And so that's where the power is. We could yell all day long and get nothing. So I think we have to strategize and think of what each of these groups, and not have too many, but what 2 or 3 are needed for the issues that are out there now that are trying to be stuffed into a square peg, and it's not fitting, and so everybody's frustrated. But because only Broomfield has done the paperwork and is leaving, and they just happen to be able to come to this meeting because the paperwork didn't get put in, and the 30 days will be a few days after this next meeting, they will be gone. They're the only ones gone. And so I believe we should stay. So while we're on that issue, let's go around. Where is everybody? You said stay.
Mm-hmm.
David?
Stay.
Stay.
Leave.
Counselor Azadi?
Hi, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Sorry, I should just talk. Just wanted to say real quick that the reason, at least from what I heard, that Boulder hasn't left is because they wanted to be there to help the votes, but the Boulder commissioner wants to leave. Lafayette mayor just told me he wants to leave. He told his liaison that he has the permission to leave, but they want some amendments. So some of these liaisons have actually pulled together amendments from their councils and the community that they're ready to propose. But to answer your question, I would like to leave.
Counselor Ireland?
I would also like to leave. That's what the citizens that I have talked to want, and I want to do what they want. As far as going forward, I know that there's just too much traffic from that airport, and somehow we got to scale it back, and I don't know the way we do that, but even where I live, we're getting a lot of airport traffic, so I know that Stapleton was overrun by traffic, and that is why we have a airport out where we do. And I just think the citizens, it's just too close, too many flights, and we got to address that and figure out how to scale it back. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so for the record, we have Counselor Carmelia, Counselor Demott, Mayor Pro Tem, and myself saying to stay, so it's a 4-3 that we stay. So, anything else for the good of the order for council reports? Seeing nothing.
Okay,
City
good
Manager.
evening. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, councilors, ladies and gentlemen that are in attendance, anybody who might be watching online. Before I begin, I just wanted to make a special recognition tonight, and that is that Community Development Director Dave Downing will be retiring officially here at the end of the week, and he has served the city for 43 years. Culminating as the Community Development Director, and prior to that was our city engineer for many years. We want to wish him the best of luck in retirement. Please don't be a stranger, but truly we just want to say thank you for your dedication, professionalism, and service to this community. And so could you join me in a round of applause?
If he would have told me it's tonight, you might have got something special.
I'm working till Thursday, man.
All right, so could we go to the next slide, please? So, council is already aware of this, but just for the community, as a reminder, the council will host its inaugural city budget town hall. And so that goes Thursday night, May 9th, from 6 to 8 p.m. That'll be held at City Park Rec Center. Our forum or our venue will be a little bit different. We're going to be breaking attendees down into small groups to do exercises to come up with some of these things that we think should be investments in our community and new services, new programs, new infrastructure, et cetera, but anything associated with the upcoming 2025 budget. And so there will be an overview by city staff of our current budget and funding priorities to kind of get us started. For those that might need childcare, complimentary childcare will be offered on site for children ages 3 months to 11 years old on a first-come, first-served basis. Of course, the meeting will be webcast on YouTube channel, on our Facebook page, and, if anybody is not able to watch it live or attend in person, they can certainly watch a recording of the meeting. And so look forward to seeing some really great community participation in that, because we certainly want to hear what folks' priorities are for our upcoming budget process. Next slide. Go
And
ahead.
how do people that can't make it because of work schedules or whatever get their items into us?
There's a QR code.
There we go. QR code on the invite?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Also on the screen, there'll be a QR code there, so if they're watching and they were
Okay.
clicking on it, they will be able to answer the questions, same questions that all at the table will be answering, as well as if they wanted to submit any community requests for consideration, they can do both online.
There you go. So,
With respect to that, if as, I think the mayor was asking if you can't make that specific timeline and interact either in person or virtually, is there some other way at different times, maybe if there's a website form that they could fill in by a date certain, for budget requests or any other, to answer any of the questions that
So
we
the
have?
budget requests, yes, they will be open for another 2 weeks after that, so they will be open for 4 weeks total. So that should be fine for that, for the community requests. We can work with communications to make sure that if they want to answer the same questions, that it's an extended period of time as well.
And public can always email any one of us and we get them to the right people.
Next slide, please. And then just wanted to celebrate a Westie win, and that was Friday afternoon. We hosted our grand opening of the Sustainability Center. It was very, very nicely attended. We had several hundred people that attended over the course of the 3+ hours that it was open for the public. But I would just tell you that, off to a great start. Last week as a full week, Monday through Friday, was a soft opening, if you will, with the celebration on Friday afternoon. But during that first week, 138 customers, 1,335 pounds of electronics, 341 pounds of books, 61 pounds of shoes, and certainly much more. If you look to the picture to the right, you'll see the large compactor, and that's for all of your routine single-strand collected recycling materials, and that's on the west side of the building, out of view, if you will, from Harlan Street. There are the current 4 drop-off locations that are around the city will be closed on May 31st. There is signage at each of those drop-off locations to remind the public about the closure and to redirect them here to the centralized site. And so if anybody wants to learn more about the Sustainability Center, they can certainly go to our website /Sustainability Center. So off to a very, very good start. Yes, Mayor.
I was asked, and I think the answer is no, but do they have to show ID that they live in Westminster
No.
to use it? Okay. Dave?
Quick question on that signage, will that be long-term so that folks go to those, I mean, those locations have been there for an awfully long time, so I'd hope those are
We'll have to
semi-permanent.
redirect folks, but we'll certainly pull down the dumpsters, but, for folks who show up in middle of June going, where'd the dumpsters go, and then just drop their stuff, we'll keep them up for a while. I don't know what the timeline is, but we keep
Okay,
them up
for a while, that's good, thank
Sure.
you.
Next slide, please. Things to know, special permits and license board meeting goes this Wednesday, 7 to 8:30 p.m. in City Hall, right here in City Hall Council Chambers. Our next City Council meeting, this is a change because we lose a study session during the month of May, and so the first 2 meetings, May 6th and May 13th, are council meetings, and then the one study session in May is on May 20th. And so first meeting of the month is truly a city council meeting. Next slide. Information-only items this evening. We've got an update on collective bargaining with our firefighters union and our Fraternal Order of Police. We also have one on Unified Development Code and Housing. If you have questions on collective bargaining, we do have an executive session tonight. That might be an easier forum to have that conversation in. Next slide. And as always, encourage folks to reach out, contact us with their questions, issues, concerns, any feedback. We want to remain accessible, responsive, transparent, accountable. You can call my office at 658-2006. Email me directly at mfreitag@westminsterco.gov. And as always, we encourage you to like us on Facebook, check us out on Instagram, follow us on X, or ring our bell at Nextdoor. Any questions? That's all I have this evening.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Just a quick question / request for the UDC code update. I know you're coming back with more information on it, but as I was going through as you're going through the description of what you're specifically tackling, didn't say infill standards regarding infill. And we talked about reuse and adaptive reuse, but I really just want to, if you recall the project that was trying to come in and get a bunch of units within a residential area. I just really want us to be thinking about those adjacencies. So that was just a plug for a specific infill section or set of standards.
I had a question around the transit-oriented development and by right zoning, and with, and you can answer me anytime, it doesn't have to be tonight, but knowing that those are at our specific transit-oriented development areas, and knowing that the 4 we have at Walnut Creek Station, not one of them has an affordable unit available. And I thought when we were working with transit-oriented development, and I don't want to see it all down in historic Westminster, and I know we have some in downtown, but there's none at Walnut Creek. And I know that there's 2 more right by zoning. One isn't open yet. It was supposed to open in March, but it's not open yet. And it's got 312 units, and not one of them is affordable. And I just think that's a real miss, so, from what our goals were.
Any response on that at this point, or do you want to follow up?
The memo submitted, interim planning manager, John McConnell. So the memo submitted tonight was obviously just an update to tell you where we are and where we're going and what the next steps are. There is some references to inclusionary zoning policies, and we have seen some indication from the council to explore those things. And so that would probably fall within the framework of your concerns there, Mayor McNally. We would have to have some type of policies to ensure that some number of units in a development were affordable versus market rate.
Councilor Carmelia.
I just had a comment, which was thank you so much for ensuring that we're having childcare at our town halls. That's an amazing win, I think, for all of us and for the city, so thank you. And since we're on this, I will follow up. It sounds like we need a policy around this. Is that what we're saying? Because if so, what can we do to make that action happen?
Well, like you said, this is information. They're going to go back and
Okay.
We'll be coming back to you.
And
with
massage
those
it.
Got
updates.
it, okay. Yeah.
On July 15th, we plan on providing you with a presentation at a study session. We'll give you some feedback on, additional feedback on where we are in the process and what staff's thinking about recommending. We want to get your feedback at that time on these items and everything else that's on your mind as well.
the only other thing is with the governor's decision of as many people can live in a home as they want, except the fire marshal can set a number if they're going to. I know in 3 places in our neighborhood that there's 8 to 9 cars already. And so as we look at things like tonight and other development, and with that law in place, I just think parking's going to be an issue.
I agree. Also, something else that was noted, now that you mentioned that, Mayor McNally, some other items that were noted in that memo were the pending state legislations. We're not exactly sure how all of those will pan out. There is
Next week.
the parking one that could eliminate parking minimums. That could be problematic, and with your concerns noted. And so, as noted in the memo, on July 15th, we'll be beyond the legislative session, and we'll know more about what the state's adopted and what we'll have to incorporate into our regulations.
Thanks. Those were just things that popped in my mind as I was reading, and knew it was information, but needed to ask. Thanks. Anybody else? Oh,
I
Councilor
have a
DeMont?
question. It's just you mentioned special permits and licensing, and I don't remember who the alternate is, but that conflicts this week with the municipal court CAT, so I'll be at the CAT meeting, so if whoever the alternate is wants to attend special permits and licensing, I will be able to make it.
Abby, do you remember?
A quick follow-up to that, I think couple months ago, I asked for a list of our liaisons and alternates. Could we get that? I don't think, maybe I missed it, but I don't think we ever got that. I would love to have that, so I can help direct residents, but also for this.
Okay, seeing nothing else, thank you.
Abby's gonna get the alternate real quick so somebody can say who that is, they know, because that's Wednesday night.
Somebody in this room doesn't remember it then.
I've got a camp meeting with the Who's.
Or maybe we didn't get one. That's possible too.
There's no alternate for that board.
Nope. Well, they're on their own.
Good.
Okay, next, presentations.
All right. Mayor, we're going to start out with concept plan for Uplands, filing one parcel A3, and so I'll turn it over to Mr. McConnell.
How come we don't have, I'm supposed to say?
Oh, where's that? Where's her script for a concept plan review?
I almost could say it, but
Gratuitous.
I can print one really quickly.
Let's take a second and get that printed.
Okay.
Maybe I'll remember what I was looking up. I forgot it in the process of opening my iPad.
That's the worst. It's been one of those Mondays.
Really, yeah. I know they complain about it being cold.
Did you beat up your people?
Are you hot? I'm hot. I'm old, menopause.
I planned for this room to be very cold, so
That's how I dress for work now, so I'm like, this is good enough for my job. It's good enough for a study session.
You have a jacket.
Yeah, well, it's an afterthought. I'm like, man.
They call it Colorado, I know it. Okay, I
How I
wear it.
rock it.
I told you rock it too.
Although I haven't heard that term, and I love it.
I didn't know that's what I was doing.
You could have run and got so much.
I had time to eat one.
While we're waiting, is there anybody that could give us an update on whatever happened at the Uplands for the flooding this weekend?
Oh, sure. Someone want to share some updates on flooding at Uplands
Sure.
this weekend?
I am happy to. Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Thank you very much, Marcus Pockner, Land Use and Community Outreach Consultant. There was a question the mayor asked about, there was an event at Uplands this weekend, and to provide a little background. As you all know, it was probably the second pretty significant storm event that we had in the last number of months. We have some very involved and participatory neighbors that really watched the site, are very helpful. We had a silt fence that was down and some sediment that was spilling into Lowell. So the city worked very closely, went out, inspected, and cited some issues that we could improve on. So this morning, we worked through some of those cleaning items. We actually reserved a stop work order on that particular site when we worked through it. I will say, this is part of the process. This is what should happen. The city has been very strong in enforcing that. Probably the most important thing that has happened in the last 2 weeks is the Clomer was approved a week and a half ago, and today our drainage report, our drainage plan for the outfall structure and for the pond were both approved. So we have been in an interim drainage condition. Most importantly, the pond that is part of A3 you'll see tonight, it's not part of the application, it just lies within there. That can now begin that process, and we've needed that pond. That's for all of it. So really unfortunate event. We're very sorry that that's happened. We are remedying the silt fence and the things that are down and making those improvements. But the real pond, the real drainage facilities are now approved, and we can move forward with making those permanent improvements so we're not working around that situation. Yeah, sure.
And thanks to staff that worked this weekend and went out and saw it visibly. Really thank you for that. Okay, thank you. The concept review plan tonight for us is Uplands Filing 1, A3, West 88th Avenue and Lowell, parcel A3. This is a concept review plan. It is not a hearing on a development application. Its purpose is to allow City Council to learn about a proposed project in its beginning stages and provide feedback to the applicant on City Council's general impressions of the proposal. In accordance with the Westminster Municipal Code, concept plan reviews occur after City Council, after city staff complete the pre-application review for a proposed project, but before staff perform a technical review for the project. The technical review, which involves an official application for an ODP or PDP or amendment thereto, will occur only if the applicant chooses to move the project forward after its concept review plan. As a part of our review process tonight, city staff will provide a brief introduction, and then the applicant or its representative will present an overview of the applicant's development proposal. City Council may then ask questions of the applicant and provide the applicant feedback on the proposal. City Council comments on this proposal are gratuitous in nature and not binding on City Council, the Planning Commission, city staff, or the applicant. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor McNally, and good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Councilors. John McConnell, Interim Planning Manager here to provide you with the introduction to this concept plan review. The project's located on the southwest corner of 86th Avenue and Lowell Boulevard. It's in the Uplands Residential Subdivision, filing number 1, and the project includes all of parcel A3, as you can see outlined in red here. Parcel A3 is Zone Plan Unit Development, or PUD, as well as surrounding properties to the north, east, and the south. To the west is Shaw Heights. It's zoned RA. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see the comprehensive plan map. The comprehensive plan designation is mixed-use neighborhood. Surrounding land use designations include mixed-use neighborhood, residential low-density, public, quasi-public, and suburban multifamily. The proposal includes the development of 50 townhomes, 36 paired homes, 41 single-family detached homes, an acre of publicly accessible private parks, all on approximately 20 acres of land. Here you can see the renderings of the proposed paired homes and single-family detached 2- and 3-story homes. And here are the architectural elevations of the townhomes. And these are 2 stories. Notice was provided for the concept plan review tonight. The applicant posted 2 signs on the properties and mailed 864 notice letters. The notice was also posted in the Westminster window, and all required notifications took place on or before April 19th of this year. And so for the applicant to pursue development of this property, they would need to process an official development plan. That plan would have to be considered by the City Council at a future public hearing. I have the applicant team here with me, and I'll swap seats with Mr. Pochner, and they'll present you with their concept plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Very nice. We can jump in. We'll go right to it. I want to thank everybody again. Marcus Pochner. I'm joined here by Kaylee. Kaylee and I will give a quick presentation, and then we have a number of team members here to answer any questions that you may have on A3. Just as John showed there, that we are just south of 86, between 86, the future 86th and 85th there, that site of A3. And again, we all think of that as where the future 5+ acre detention pond will be in that corner. We'll show a little image of that as well. This is that same notice area, 863 plus folks that we notified of this. I do want to just say that we've learned a lot as we come give this overall Uplands update on how to try to show you the cumulative effect of some of the approvals that are going forward. So I mentioned that green asterisk there earlier when we talked about storm drainage from the mayor's question. That is where the pond, a 5-acre detention pond, that then goes the outfall structure and then goes through Downshout Boulevard. That is now approved in the last week, and that was approved today for that. So we're going through that process. That is the permanent process. So you're starting to see the overall, the global infrastructure plans that are moving into the site, water, drainage, et cetera. But a very important development, important for the community and for the construction process. This shows the 4 neighborhoods that have now been approved. There were 2 neighborhoods, A2 and C2, that were approved there in March and April, including the first fully affordable development in Uplands. So starting to see kind of the picture of the community neighborhood by neighborhood. One thing that we wanted to note is you all know this very well, the 40+ acres of PLD and view corridors, but how important these individual neighborhoods now, as we have 4 of them, what it means as we go through the neighborhood. So this shows, again, 85th and 86th. Looking at parcel A3 there, you can see the bike lane along Lowell, the 10-foot multi-use trail on the east side of Lowell, and then 6-foot along 86 sidewalks, and then wrapping that with 8-foot interior to the neighborhood. So really starting to see that infrastructure. This was some of the area. We had some of the sediment issues on the construction. You really start to see the significant infrastructure that will come in and really be part of that process and addressing that. I may have done something. I apologize. Back away, Kaylee tells me. This shows a little bit, we always show this compliance spreadsheet here that looks at it, what the master ODP provided, required, that we brought to all of you and that was approved, and then how we're going about that. So I just point out the publicly accessible private parks there. In those 4 neighborhoods that have been approved, they called for 4% of that land to be publicly accessible private parks. What matters in these presentations when we go neighborhood by neighborhood is we're adding to that cumulative each time, and we're actually providing 7.2%. There's been more opportunities to add in green space for parkland to really add that. It really does matter as we move through the process. We also now have the affordable housing, 247 units were approved, and we have the other applications in the process. As we transition now to A3, the specific neighborhood before you tonight for concept review, you can see that we had a max of 141 allowed. We are proposing 127 homes, right in the middle of the density range that we're going there, and we're actually providing a little bit more setback along Lowell Boulevard, thinking of that perimeter setback, adding in that multi-use trail, really having kind of the enhanced landscaping along Lowell to really respect the existing neighborhood that lies just to the west of this site. This is Kaylee, and she'll walk us through. I will note, and I apologize, we had a slight graphic error on this. This is not how the proposed detention pond lines up. So please just focus on the site itself, and then on the next slide, you'll see how it lines up with the road on the west side. This was an error that we had, so apologize. The detention facility does not go right across the road to other houses. Kaylee.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. As Marcus mentioned, Keely Gillespie with Norris Design. We're pleased to bring forth Upland's A3 neighborhood, which will add to the rich housing stock in the area by providing for sale single-family detached and single-family attached homes through paired in-town homes. This neighborhood is located between the approved Uplands A2 and A4, as you can see here. There are 3 points of access along West 86th Avenue and 1 along West 85th Avenue. The local roads are shown in the darker gray color, and the lighter gray denotes our alleys. We're providing 4 different home types within this neighborhood for a total of 127 homes for a diverse streetscape and variety of housing options. The homes along West 86th Avenue in orange color are the 2-story townhomes, mimicking the adjacent neighborhood fabric by providing a pedestrian-friendly streetscape while also providing new architectural style. The darker brown represents our 2-story paired homes. These are located in a couple of places in the neighborhood, including along Lowell Boulevard, where they provide compliance with the perimeter sensitivity, allowing for paired homes with a max height of 2 stories per the master ODP. The darker yellow color lots are our 3-story single-family detached homes. These homes are internal to the neighborhood and create a height transition to the existing homes. And the lighter cream color represents our 2-story tuck-under detached homes. These front along West 85th Avenue and Irving in the southeast portion of our project. These tuck-under homes are located to accommodate the existing grade. The proposed little over 5-acre detention pond is in the southwest corner, as you can see here on the screen. While not a part of this application, it is being built as part of the overall Uplands infrastructure. And then the 2 green stars here on the screen denote our publicly accessible private parks, providing nearly an acre of open space. We'll have multiple pet pickup stations, bike amenities provided throughout. The central star concept is based on the library theme, which consists of tree groves, seating elements, shade structures, structures to house books, and open recreational lawn. And the easternmost star represents the den, which encourages congregation, playground, and chalk walk play elements. All the parks and landscape area will focus on the low water use landscape to be consistent with the rest of Uplands. Next slide. Here on the screen you can see the proposed A3 neighborhood in the center and the A2 to the north, A4 to the south. This shows the rich connections to the PLD and the overall connectivity throughout the western portion of A, and how it will inform future connections as the east is developed. Next slide. A variety of floor plans and new architectural styles are provided specific to this neighborhood. All homes within this neighborhood are all alley loaded and will provide 2-car garages. The first, we will have single-family detached tuck-under homes. These are 2-story on the front and 3 stories on the back. Next slide. Next, we have our single-family detached 3-story homes located internal to the neighborhood, creating a height transition from the existing neighborhood fabric. Next slide. Here we have our single-family attached paired homes. These are generally located along the edges of the proposed neighborhood. Next slide. Finally, we have townhomes. These homes will front West 86th Avenue and are also provided internal to this neighborhood. Within our site-specific ODP, we will be asking for a couple of exceptions to the city's regulations. Exceptions have always been anticipated within Uplands in order to comply with the vision established in the Uplands PDP and provide the much-needed housing within the city of Westminster. Our first exceptions are in regards to the landscape regulations. We've requested on most Uplands neighborhoods and is tied to the city's landscape regulations, which require on-lot landscaping for both single-family detached and single-family attached paired homes. In place of private on-lot landscape area, residents have great access to the proposed trail and park system. And next, we're requesting an exception to the landscape regulation connected to single-family attached paired and townhomes. The overall site landscape area, we're providing approximately 39.6%. So we're going to work with staff through the ODP process and see if we can eliminate that. Next slide. All our requests here on this slide are consistent with the other approved neighborhoods. Our first exception is tied to the architectural characteristics within the MODP. Similar to past, we are requesting a lower roof pitch that allows for some main roofs to have more contemporary home design and secondary roofs such as a porch roof to accommodate egress windows above. And then located within the table on the screen denotes the single-family detached and attached townhome lot requirements for the MODP and the exceptions that we are requesting. And lastly, we are requesting an exception to parking. We plan to meet this requirement through on-street and garage parking. Overall, we're required to have 365 spaces, and we're proposing 428 spaces throughout this neighborhood.
this is a neighborhood, just going to transition here, that has a lot of parking available. We have handed out, and I wanted to be sure and acknowledge that to the public. You turn in the presentation much earlier in the process, but we were here and Councilor DeMott asked for an update about the water that we're using and how that is going from our plan. And I'm sorry, Kaylee, I probably passed out all copies of it. Is that fair? So I probably don't have a version of it in front of me. But if you don't mind, but I just wanted to say, and I'll try to explain it for the public, there is an overall chart here that, again, back to, thank you very much, the ODP and the overall plan that was there, right, that was allowed. And most important, it was to show that for all of Uplands, 778 acre feet was allocated. That was the water allocation for all of Uplands when we went through that process. As we said then, and we are standing behind, we are going to reduce that by 100 acre feet, okay? So down to 678. If you go to the chart right below it, that is based on 678 acre feet across Uplands. So when you see the neighborhoods that have been approved, we are meeting those targets, okay? So we are meeting that, and then you see we're actually 1 acre foot below in one of the proposed neighborhoods. So, Councilor DeMont, that is not to the overall 778 acre feet, that is to the reduced number, the 100 lower. How we're doing that, there are 2 ways that we really tried to detail before. Probably most importantly is the on-lot landscaping, right? These are smaller lots and correspondingly smaller area that we're providing irrigation to, right? Simple, sustainable, much more different turf. We've talked before about the turf that we're using here, low water. The second part of that is then the home design and the energy savings and water design that we're using. Again, a 30% savings in-house compared to a traditional house. So those are the 2 ways. We are showing there again, with the approval of this, the neighborhoods and the ultimate build out, we believe and plan to meet that 100 acre feet reduction for the overall site. So we'll add that in as just kind of a kind of tracking it, if you will, more of a desktop where we're able to go to it each time and provide it, but that's something we wanted to provide as well. So with all of that, we're here to answer any questions that you may have.
I will go to those who I can't see. Counselor Izadi, any questions?
Nope.
Counselor Ireland?
Okay, from what I could hear, basically none of the properties will have yards. Is that true?
No, that is not true. They'll just have more of a reduced, so they front onto open space, common space. So they're rear loaded.
So it's common space. So they don't have their own yard. It's common space.
They'll still have a smaller front portion of their yard. And this is.
And what is the?
So what you're not seeing here, so the colored lots, that's the whole lot. They're gonna have landscaping in front of their homes. So these are not the actual footprints of what these homes will be.
But they won't have landscaping in the back of their home.
That is correct.
Okay. I'm not a fan, but.
We lose you? Hello?
No, I'm done with
Oh,
my questions. Thank
okay,
you.
Thank you. Counselor Hott?
No, I don't have any questions. I just have a couple comments. I actually am a fan of the smaller lots. As somebody who, as my kids got older, we didn't need that giant yard anymore. Trying to find a house in Westminster that did not have a giant yard was really difficult. And that's maintenance, it takes time, it takes money to take care of. And so I know there's a market for smaller lots. It also helps in the cost, the price. And what I really like about this neighborhood is the housing diversity in the neighborhood. I like that there's paired homes, detached, and townhomes all together in the same neighborhood. Yeah, so the housing diversity, and because we don't have very much housing with smaller lots, I'm really excited about that. So, no, I'm really excited about this project, so thank you.
Great, thank you.
Counselor Camilleri?
I don't have any questions either. I would like to know, after a few of these are built or partially built, if we could get a tour, if I could get a walkthrough. I'd love to know, and I don't think this is the place for it, but I'd love to know some more of the details of how we achieved the 30% savings around water. And I've done other walkthroughs of sustainable houses and, how that's done. I'd love to, get a better idea of how we made it happen.
So, Counselor, just so you know, this water slide that we passed out and we'll have available for everybody else, we have a few copies as well. We're going to continue to kind of refine that, so as a dashboard to show that. So yes, we'd love to do a tour on that. I think we also, just using the standards that are in WaterSense and other ways, it's about the appliances and some of those. So we're going to start providing more information on that as well.
Counselor Demott?
You got reinforcements.
Yeah, I guess so.
First, thank you for this. I mean, that was a pretty recent ask, so I appreciate that you guys pulled that together, and I'm glad to hear that you're going to make that as part of one of your dashboards. I think that's good information, and it's good to see that you're exceeding what you had told us. The only question I have, I mean, I like the diversity, and we've talked a lot about that, about, options and entry points to the market. So with these, are these all owner occupied or some of these rental? What's the mix here?
We show these all as owner-occupied, for-sale product on this neighborhood. I think, as Councilor mentioned, we're really trying to focus on diversity of product and size. So certainly different price points will be anticipated across these three varieties.
And what's the kind of, and if it's in here and I missed it, I apologize, but what do you anticipate kind of being small end to large end, like 1 bedroom to 4 bedroom? What is the different mix in this lot?
You're going to see that door open up and somebody come tell us that for sure. But I know that's across the minimum or probably the smaller footprints.
And there he is.
So there he is, yeah. You stay there. Go ahead.
Is there a mic? Paul Brady with Architecture. The houses are generally 2 to 3 bedrooms. There's no 4 bedrooms, excuse me. And then the square footages are, I'm going to say probably about 16 to 1,800 square feet average. Some lower, some higher.
Great. I don't have any other questions. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I just had a couple of questions. One, I do appreciate and commend the architecture of the townhomes in particular, them being very discrete units. I really appreciate when we do that because I feel like it creates more sense of ownership. So and individuality, even though they are similar, I do appreciate that. And I also, like Councilor Hott, appreciate the diversity of unit types in this. So one note on the site plan that I just had a question about. There's not a sidewalk in those 4 units that abut onto the drainage. There was not a sidewalk showing, and so I was just curious if that was just a drawing error and if it would have one.
Yeah, we will work through that through the ODP process.
Okay, because it would be nice for them to be able to connect all the way over to Lowell from there, just to create some better east-west connectivity through the neighborhood. Okay.
Councilor, Mayor Pro Tem, if I may, I just want to acknowledge that we mentioned the approval of that drainage basin and the pond there. That is shown as it is today. That may be something that we come back and talk about, the landscaping, and make changes to that down the road, but this allows us to construct that. So your point is very well noted. There probably will be additional landscaping and some of those other things that we hope to add to that area as well.
Thank you. And then the last question I had was, I'm looking at this with respect to, when I say this, for those online, the water conservation slide. So it's focused on a per unit basis, and this is awesome that the homes are being designed to have less indoor water use. But as I think about the lots themselves, yes, they have less irrigated area, so that's good, but I also think about the HOA area and the landscaping there and the associated water use. So how does that balance out? Because we're saving water with the units, but there's the untold story of the of the common areas.
Yeah, so I'll say this, and we did try to put it together to kind of go through that. We are figuring out the methodology to track that, right? So not just the PLD land, you're asking about the privately accessible or private parks, right? Publicly accessible.
All the
right?
common area.
All the common areas. So we're figuring out the best ways to show that. We actually wanted to show it to staff, how we're gonna do that as a dashboard. So I think, Mayor Pro Tem, that's something we'd add into that to show it. Your point, though, and you can remember other neighborhoods, we've really thought a lot about the plant palette, the sustainability, the xeriscape. You saw box gardens, the community gardens, other ways that really take down on the turf. So completely mindful of that. You all know this, but 50% just on a home, right? 50% of water usage is outside on the landscape, right? So we're constantly thinking of how to do that. So we'll come back with more information on that, but we are not forgetting that that's part of that planning as well.
And then one last question for the homes. Councilor Ireland was asking about backyards. I was just curious, are all the front yards kind of HOA maintained from the front door on, or is there any flexibility? I know Bradburn has those little front yards and you can put, your own plants or grow stuff there. I'm just kind of curious, is there any of that would be available in these units, just being, able to grow small little tiny gardens?
Their own herbs.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, Kaylee is looking at, to kind of look at that information to give you a direct answer. The only thing I'd point out, it's not at all a disagreement with it, is just we try to be so careful about the pocket parks and then the connection to PLD. We think that, yes, smaller lots, but we are immediate 1-minute walks, right? Trying to think about that connection. And obviously, just to the northeast of us is a 10-acre park here, right? So, Council, that's not, Mayor Pro Tem, that's not answering your question. But there will be those private yards as well. We've had some exceptions, whether it's on the side yard, front yard, or backyard, but we're working to provide that space as well. Sorry, Kayla.
Yeah, you can go to the slide where
This one right over here?
Yeah, it shows kind of a real life example in the upper right hand corner of what the front yard space may look like. Smaller in nature, while this one doesn't have a lot of landscape in it because I think it was freshly built. But we're working through our lot typicals through the ODP process, and we'll provide, every unit has to have X amount of trees and shrubs per code. So we're working through that, and we'll be sure to include that as well.
Okay, so there's not enough space for doing your own little tiny garden or something on these units. It would be nice if we, as you build this area out, just thinking about little patches that people could cultivate, even if it's small. Tiny plots of land are still.
Great.
And we do have our community garden within A4.
I know, it's not as convenient when you're gonna go get your herbs.
Gonna find those found spaces that you talk about. We are working on that for sure, yes, yeah.
I love the different pieces of housing you're putting into this one. Love them, love them, love them. And I think all the other questions have been asked, but anybody online think of anything else before we let these folks go? Okay, as stated. Go ahead.
Councilor Ireland, I'm just concerned about kids, dogs. I go to these apartments and there's just not enough space, green space for dogs and kids, and I think they need their own space in their yard. So that's what my biggest concern with having almost no yard is. So anyway, just let you know.
Thank you. As stated at the outset of the concept plan review, councilor comments are gratuitous and do not bind or obligate the applicant, city staff, planning commission, or city council to any course of action or future decision. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Do you want a break? Yes, please. Okay. Quick break.
I thought. Maybe I'll give it to somebody.
Okay.
Go.
Oh, we ready? Yep. Next.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Councilors, we have a presentation requesting an exemption for concept plan reviews from requiring public notice. And so turn it over to Mr. McConnell again. Go ahead.
Thank you again, Mayor Pro Tem, City Councilors. Thanks for having me again tonight. Staff would like to provide you with a presentation, and we'd like to seek your feedback and direction on what we hope you may find is a process improvement to the CPR process, the concept plan review. I'm going to provide you a little bit of background here. So on April 24th of 2023, City Council implemented the concept plan review process, and I'll refer to it as the CPR for short. The CPR process applies to projects that require the approval of the City Council at a future public hearing. It originated from the City Council's desire to be more informed about development concepts in the initial stages of review. And it provides the City Council the opportunity to learn about projects at this initial stage and, if desired, provide comments to the applicant. CPRs are accommodated at study sessions, and they don't include public participation. CPRs require the same public notice as public hearings for land use matters, including signed posting, mailed notice, and newspaper notice. Feedback received from CPR applicants reveals that notification costs, including sign manufacturing, installation, removal, and mailed notices, escalate into thousands of dollars. One recent CPR application required 13 signs at a cost of $350 each for a total of $4,450, in addition to 500 mailed notice letters for about $800 for a total cost of $5,350, and that's not including the application fee associated with the CPR. With a growing number of critical priorities being managed by City Council, meetings and study session agendas fill quickly, leaving less space to accommodate CPRs. And unfortunately, sometimes critical agenda items arise and take precedent over and necessitate rescheduling of CPRs. Postponing and rescheduling of CPRs often requires retraction, re-notification, and reposting of signs. This is costly and time-consuming to the applicant. It also causes a bit of confusion to the public. And CPRs don't include a public hearing, and no public comment is received. And because public comment is not accommodated, notification costs incurred by the applicant do not yield a commensurate benefit to the City Council or the public. So public notice for CPRs often also creates confusion among those who receive notice or view the sign postings, resulting in citizens attending study sessions with the assumption that public comment will be taken like it is in a public hearing. So the staff would like for the council to consider a recommendation to direct staff to prepare an amendment to the Westminster Municipal Code to remove the public meeting notice requirements just for CPRs. And this would include the requirement that an applicant must post meeting notice signs, mailed notice to residents within 1,000 feet of the subject property, and provide notice of the City Council study session in the newspaper. Of course, CPRs will continue to be placed on study session agendas, and all agendas will continue to be posted on the city's website according to existing protocols for study sessions. If directed, the amendment will be presented to City Council for consideration at a future City Council meeting. With that concludes the staff's presentation. I'm here for any questions that you may have, and I would gladly accept your feedback and direction on this.
Councilor Azadi?
Sounds good to me.
Councilor Ireland?
Developers pay for the signage and the letters, right?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm against this because citizens are already thinking we're not transparent. So if we take this away, I think there's going to be an uproar. I learned about the Foster Farms project from the signage, so I think at least the signage is very important.
Counselor Hott?
I'm for the staff recommendation.
When it comes to the public comment, and this is a gap in my knowledge that I've been meaning to catch up on anyway, can you just briefly go over the high level, what are the requirements for that, so that I can see whether they're exactly the same or what those are?
As far as the process, I'll start with the framing up the process. So our pre-application review is largely administrative unless a CPR is involved, and of course only for projects that require future city council hearing and approval. And so the pre-application is the first step in the development review process. It's really a high level, very quick touch on a concept based on the applications that we've received since the concept plan review process started. Only 3 out of the 12 CPRs have actually advanced to technical review. And so once a project does get into the technical review cycle, after the first round of technical review, they're required to do a neighborhood meeting or a neighborhood notice. And so either the public is invited to meet with the applicant and review their project at that time. And at that time, it's also much more refined and actually able to advance through the rest of the project towards approval. Unlike at the pre-app process where it often drastically changes between concept and actual technical submittal based on the feedback. And so that's the first touch that the public gets, and they get mailed notices for that. And so after the technical reviews are completed and the project is ready to advance for public hearing, the public gets this type of public notice. The signs go up, the mailed notices go out, and the newspaper notices are published for the first public hearing, which is the Planning Commission. And then after it completes the Planning Commission, the same process happens again with the mailed notice, the newspaper notice, and the signs posting, and then it goes to City Council. And so those are the 2 public hearings that the public would have the opportunity to comment on, as well as the neighborhood meeting. And that all really is if a project advances outside of the concept plan review or the pre-application review.
It seems to me I'd really like to look at the whole process more in depth. I'd love to put that on the agenda at some point to just see if we could streamline this a bit for us and the public, or make it clearer, give the public earlier opportunity. I don't know exactly what that looks like now, but I'd like to talk about it. But either way, for this, I'm definitely for staff's recommendation. Let's get rid of the extra fees for now.
Counselor Demott?
I'm going to throw something out in between. So this is a fairly new process, and we just started doing this, like they mentioned. And I'm not sure that we have enough time under this to really properly say this isn't, worth it. I do think that maybe it seems a bit heavy to be doing exactly what we're doing for the, overall hearing. But I have to wonder, you mentioned how many haven't made it through. And so, it'd be and maybe you do or don't know, but I mean, was that based off of some feedback? Because I certainly know from my perspective, or not just perspective, but from my experience with it, there were questions that were posed to us that we were able to address with the applicants that came from the public. And so, there's 2 ways to look at it. You could look at it as a cost, but you could look at it as a savings that maybe they didn't go down a path that would have probably cost them a lot more money and maybe ended up not going forward anyway. So I'm not saying that's, I understand staff's recommendation. I'm just wondering, is there an in-between? Because I do think that trying to at least let the public know that we're going to have some sort of thing before us in a more I don't know the right word more than what we do for a normal council meeting, just so people know that it's coming, and and potentially reduced from what the actual application or hearing would be something else. And did you guys evaluate maybe doing something less versus just totally not doing it?
Not exactly, but now that you've brought that up, it might make sense just to maybe consider the mailed notice. The newspaper notice and the sign postings are costly, and if the public hearing gets postponed, not public hearing, if the concept plan review at the study session gets postponed or moved to another date, it would be less consequential to remail the notices and less costly.
I would like that as an option just because a couple things. One, it does reduce the cost, but it still gets to the public. And I feel like that gives them a better opportunity to be notified of what exactly it is. And when you're driving by those signs, they look a lot like, something's going to happen. And I certainly in my time have been asked, like, well, what happened with that? Like, well, it didn't actually, go through the whole process, whether it did or not. I mean, I've seen it both ways. So I don't know if the group's open to, having staff go back and look at that. But I will just tell you that part of the reason that we left it in when we wanted to do something earlier in the process was to make sure the public knew. It was actually to also save developer time and money to be able to get just some feedback generally, even though they don't have to adhere to it. I think that it's proven to be useful. But if the public doesn't know about it, how, and I know that they don't have the same, call it bite at the apple, but they certainly, as you are learning, they certainly do make sure that we know how they feel about things, and I think that's appropriate. But however we can do something that, isn't too costly, that is a little bit more direct so the public understands that this is, kind of pre-app phase, I think makes sense because it's, it is transparent. It makes people not feel caught off guard. And I feel like if we pull it, it kind of goes hard the other way. So maybe, and that doesn't mean maybe we don't come back and say this still is not, meeting the need, but to go completely the other way is hard for me to get on board with that. But I think if it was something in between, I could be on board with it.
I had similar feelings in terms of just what struck me when you were talking was like, well, we let the public know, but they don't really have a forum for public comment. Yeah. So if there is a way where, and we do have we have required public meetings, so that, but it's kind of a little bit later down the road. So yeah, I would be supportive of us trying to find a way where we can reduce the onus on the developer in terms of the costs, and then you kind of at risk to the flexibility of being able to get to the council at a meeting. I'm sensitive to us kind of changing the schedule. And I was thinking, maybe whatever the most effective way is. I was writing down signage on site, but I mean, again, that's like hard to do if there's a date certain associated. Ideally, it would be nice if there is a mailed notice that it could actually have a venue for public input, because like if there was a contact provided on that public notice, hey, the potential project is going to be discussed and shown to council. While you can't comment at that meeting, you can put in, your comments here or something. So that's just a way where it is that back and forth a little bit more in terms of the transparency and listening, but just totally hearing what you're saying. So yeah, middle ground.
What I thought about the signs, because when I read that, and I can understand why they're confusing, so they probably need to be different colors. Like the pre-concept is bright yellow. Get their attention, something's coming. I don't know, but when I'm awake from 2 to 4, these things come after I read my packet. Broomfield does allow public hearings. And I haven't talked to, when I heard about the process, and I just know that's part of their process. I know for us and how we've done it, I get emails from people that know it, they read the packet, so they know it's going to be on. So I just ask their questions if they have them, or if they have suggestions or whatever. So there's always a way to get a hold of us, because we're the ones that ask the questions. And at least if we can, we put out on Facebook and other places, everything else, we should put this process through there and share whatever we decide, how they can have input, even if it's just by emails, and who all they can email, so that we get it. And when we read what I have to read, it's gratuitous. I mean, our thoughts are gratuitous, so they have to understand that concept, that we aren't setting anything in stone, but we're listening. And I just think getting, especially as we have infill and things more around, closer vicinity to people, they're going to care a lot more. Except if something's happening over there and they go, oh, that sounds good, not going to bother me. But when you have something closer to home, it does bother them. So just having a way to do it. So I was thinking of how you both are sort of speaking. Just didn't know if we've really had enough time to massage it. I certainly haven't gone, and I see Mayor Gastriana often, so I will ask her next week when I see her, if she could start all over, would she still have it how they do it? Is there anything they would change? And just because how they started it and what they do doesn't mean, so I was okay with not doing it exactly their way. I just thought it was important to see things, and I think it's been very beneficial that I've even heard from some of the proposers, they didn't think of things, because everybody that's working on things is looking at it this way. We're out into the world and we see it totally differently, so it's like, oh, didn't even think about that. So I just think it's a win-win when we can have those conversations and make it the best project possible. So I think it sounds like we'd be okay if you go and mull it around again.
All right. So I'll go back and I'll take this feedback and come back with a new recommendation. What I've heard so far is there are some that would be in favor of the recommendation as is, some that would be okay with just the mailed notice, and then there's some exploring that we would have to do for some of your ideas, Mayor.
Good, go ahead.
Should we perhaps combine this with a deeper, because I agree about just about everything that folks said here tonight, but I feel like I have more to add, and I'd love, again, maybe not, I feel like that might be rework if we have this piece go back and not the rest of it. Because I agree, I think we should still be involved early. How can we get it a little bit more efficient?
Spit out what you want them to look at.
Well, I just feel like maybe an agenda item to look at this, and then we can talk about it more.
Mayor, if I could. Counselor, I think what you're talking about is the entire development process,
Right.
start to finish, what that looks like, specifically where this fits in, but trying to understand the entire development process. And this could be a subset of that. Is that fair?
100%, because I might have a different opinion on this piece.
Right, once you understand the start to finish.
Exactly.
Does that sound okay?
That's-
Okay, we can do that.
Did that not happen in onboarding?
We did, but it was very quick. It was one slide and very quick.
Okay.
Go.
I just have a comment.
Uh-huh.
So I don't feel like just doing mailings is inclusive, because some people see things as signs. And I know for the Foster Project, I never got a mailing, even though I'm right across the street from it. So I just concerned that the public is going to think we're trying to hide things. So I just want it to be as transparent as the process as we can make it.
Okay, sounds like we're going to have a full discussion.
We'll come back. Okay? Mr. McConnell, good?
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Next.
Alrighty. Mayor, the next one is presentation on utility finance and water budget-based rate structures. And We started this conversation during the budget process last year. And the question was raised about property-based budgeting or property-based water rates. And so we've done some work internally as a staff, and the team's here to kind of talk the council through that. But this is really a follow-up from budget last year. And Mr. Lindsay will start us out.
All right. Thank you, council. Good evening. Excited to be here this evening to talk about some utility finance items. We have a cast of characters in front of you. So Chris Lindsay, Assistant City Manager and Chief of Staff. Paul Knippel, our Director of Public Works and Utilities. Drew Beckwith, our Water Resources Analyst in Public Works and Utilities. And Brian Donahue, our Utility Finance Administrator and Policy and Budget in the City Manager's Office. So what you see in front of you, this group of folks is really a partnership on budgeting and financing within the utility, and then operating the utility. And I think it's going to provide you a good base tonight as we talk through both of these topics. So 2 topics tonight. One is an introduction to utility finance and the management that goes into setting rates and the cost of service. And then the second is providing info to council in response to discussions on water budget-based rate structures. Council and staff have previously discussed this and called it property-based billing. The term in the industry is water budget-based rate structure, so that's how we're going to refer to it tonight, and how we'll refer to it. So we fit within, especially the folks that would implement something like this. Both of these topics really fit in. First, on the right-hand side, the strategic plan for the city around robust infrastructure, but also especially the feedback from our community. Quality of water and sewer services was ranked by 43% of our residents as the most important service, and 68% were satisfied with that service. And the most interaction folks will have with our utility system is the bill that they receive every month. And what we wanted to show here is an average residential utility bill, all those categories that are down the left-hand side of the utility bill that we receive every month, and what portion of that is each grouping, water, sewer, stormwater, and roadway. And we're actually going to follow this diagram over a couple of meetings throughout the summer as we work through each of the items within the utility and the rate setting process, and how we finance that specific area. So this averages, this is an average, again, across all 12 months of the year for an average utility customer. Just under 50% of a utility bill is the water portion. 38% is sewer, and then those fixed fees for stormwater and the roadway infrastructure fee. Next, I want to briefly touch on the Westminster Municipal Charter, in that there's 2 sections within City Charter that we really utilize as we work on utility finance. So first and foremost, 14.4 within the Westminster Municipal Charter rates. Council shall have the power to fix rates, and then towards the very middle section there shall be no discrimination in such rates within any classification of users thereof, nor shall free service be permitted. And that's something that we're always working to make sure we abide by as we work on utility rates. And then section 14.6, utility finances. The rates and charges for a public utility, and then it lists the types of utilities that are allowed, shall be so fixed as to at least meet all the operating costs of such utility. That's where the other portion of utility finance, our cost of service study, comes in. So some of the basics around utility finance and utility financing. We look at both near and long-term financial plans, cost estimates and needs for each of our utilities, and then we use a separate model for each water and sewer to lay out rates. That's the spreadsheet model that many of you have seen Brian go through on the big screen where we squint. It is many tabs that go into that allow us to plan out a sustainable model and sustainable rate structure. We use those to compare the revenues that come in to the expenditures and look at variables such as bonding term length, coupon rate, debt service coverage, and then lastly here, the reserves within each of those utilities. There is a capital project reserve and a rate stabilization reserve in each of those utilities. I mentioned a cost of service and rate study, or a cost of service study. The city conducted a cost of service and rate study in 2018 to determine the amount of rate revenue that should be recovered or recommended to be recovered from each class of customers. Really, it talks about how does each class of customer increase the cost to run the utility. It's really a best practice to do this and to periodically review how to set rates and cover costs. The outcome of the cost of service and the rate study is a set of rates that can be structured to recover the desired and appropriate amount of revenue for each class of customer. Staff is already planning to begin scoping a cost of service and rate study later this year, and that will begin the first part of 2025 in earnest with the staff working on that. Now I'm going to move into water budget-based rate structures. So as I mentioned, this is something that we've previously termed property-based billing. And really, this is a new concept for the city. And what a water-based structure does is it looks at both indoor and outdoor use and tailors an amount of water for each customer or group of customers based on indoor and outdoor use, which can be based on your home size, lot characteristics, or a number of different items. What we're discussing this evening is something that would apply to a single-family customer class, single-family residential customer class. And really, the water budget is something that you can use to teach the right amount of water for someone to use at home, right? Indoor and outdoor, an appropriate level of water to use, lawn, indoor, based on all sorts of certain characteristics that we'll touch on as we move forward. Lastly, I would note here, we've done a lot of work, our staff has done a lot of work talking, and you'll see this, to our peer utilities that have implemented different types of water budget-based rate structures. And they've all said that it takes significant time and significant education to really transition successfully residential customers into this approach to a billing structure. So with a water budget-based billing structure, you have both an indoor portion and an outdoor portion. And really what you're doing is setting an amount of water that's expected to be used for both indoor and outdoor separately per month. How much of a portion do you get? There's a number of different ways to set each of these. I'm going to talk about indoor first. I'm not going to hit all the items on here, but I would say we've identified 4 different options here on how you could structure the indoor portion. You'll see a number of these with the examples. As you go down the list from top to bottom, these become increasingly more complex. They become more intensive to implement and to maintain. They become more intrusive, and they become more costly to implement, but they also become more accurate to implement. and providing, again, a budget of water that a certain household or class of households should utilize. So some utilities set a fixed amount, some use average winter consumption that we're familiar here with our sewer bills, bathroom count, or person count. And then there's pros and cons here. For the outdoor portion of the water budget, we've identified 3 different structures. Again, same applies as you go down. This really becomes more complex, more intensive, and more expensive to implement, but also more accurate for each individual lot. Some of the outdoor portions that we'll talk about are based on lot size. Some are on landscaped area of a lot, and then some get down to the types of material that you have in the landscape within the lot. So we're going to go through some examples. The first one is Centennial Water and Sanitation District, which is in Highlands Ranch. They set an indoor portion that's set for every single family residence at 6,000 gallons per month. They provide an outdoor portion based on the irrigable area being on average 45% of the lot size, and then the amount estimated to be used within your budget is also balanced off of historical weather patterns for each month through the year. And then there's 4 tiers that you can see. You can see they charge based on how much of the budget that you've utilized for that month. The city of Boulder really has I'd say the most intensive that we've reviewed. So your indoor allocation with Boulder is based on the number of folks who reside within the household. So for 4 people, it would be 6,000 gallons per month. The outdoor allocation is based on the irrigable area. So here we're showing that based on the green portion of a lot. They use 5 different block rates depending upon water use. And I would also note this approach took 3 years to implement for the city of Boulder. The city of Greeley recently went to a water budget-based rate structure. Their indoor portion is based on 45 gallons per person per day budget. The outdoor portion is based on irrigable area, and it's different based on real-time weather characteristics. This was honestly the most interesting as we reviewed these. Because the weather patterns change, you won't know your outdoor portion budget until after the month has ended. So you don't necessarily know at the beginning of the month how many gallons or 1,000 gallons you're aiming to use for the outdoor portion for that month. So say you had a warmer month and watered your grass more frequently, you might have a different budget than what the historical average was for that month. Really interesting what they've done, and then you can see the 4 tiers that are here. The city of Thornton, which I think many of us have seen of late, and I think council has talked about this a bit, the indoor portion of their water budget is based on average winter consumption for a household. And then the outdoor portion is a specific volume per lot size, and they have categories of sizes of lots. And then they have 4 tiers with which they charge those rates and base those water budgets up to. So tier 1 is your indoor usage, tier 2 gets you into outdoor, 3 gets you over that outdoor allotment, and then tier 4 gets you well over that outdoor allotment or that outdoor budget. Last, I want to highlight Fort Collins. So they base their budgets off of the indoor portion being the number of residents and the number of bedrooms within your dwelling. The outdoor allotment is the irrigated area within your yard. but then they only communicate this on their utility bills. They don't use it to charge with the rate structure. So it's purely informational, it's educational, but it's not used to calculate the amount that a customer pays each month. So this gets back to that concept of using the water budget-based structure to educate a customer base. I want to mention some considerations that the staff has seen as we've gone through and reviewed these. I think at the most basic level, you have to remember that any revenue structure must produce the revenues that cover the cost of the utility. So as a bill goes down for one group of customers, they must, by definition, go up for another group of customers. The public engagement throughout this process is really critical to get folks engaged so they understand that a change in their utility bill is coming down the pike and what it means for them, and then to encourage them to change behaviors to potentially save water or operate within a water budget. We've seen that this conversion can be expensive and can take considerable time and effort, but this is dependent upon the options that are chosen, right? As I mentioned, you go down those list of structures, they get more expensive to implement. And then the conversion has one-time expenses up front to establish a system, and then ongoing expenses to maintain and provide customer service throughout a system. Many of these require additional utility billing staff. Data records have to be updated. You're receiving more calls. And it is often a more expensive way to charge residents for water. So, as I mentioned, if bills go down for one group, they must go up for another. But just by implementing a water budget-based rate system, the utility costs more to operate because of the cost to set up and maintain the system. So bills, by definition, will go up. And then you adjust within those groupings of customers throughout the process. With that, I'm gonna wrap up with our options. So I mentioned that the staff is working on a cost of service and rate study to begin the study in 2025. If council desires to evaluate a water budget-based rate structure, we would roll this into that project and scope this out as we move forward through 2024 and build this into a cost of service and rate study that would take place in 2025 for implementation after 2025. The other option that's in front of council tonight is to take no further action and to continue the current 3-tier water system that we have, also knowing that we're moving into a cost of service and rate study on its own, which will reevaluate the current 3-tier system. It's a lot of information. I'm going to stop now and take questions.
Couple clarification questions and then questions to consider. One, you talked about that some of the cons on when you had the comparison table of the different this table where we had no measure of efficiency. Can you just give an example of what would you be looking for when you're saying there's no measure of efficiency?
So thank you, Councilor Drew Beckwith, Public Works and Utilities, Mayor Pro Tem, sorry. What Chris was saying was that the purpose of having a budget-based rate was to teach people an efficient amount of water to use, right? How much should I be using? So when we're using the word efficiency here, it is how close does this parameter get to measuring, like, yes, that's the right amount of water you should use. So for instance, in average winter consumption, we could have a house that has a bunch of old toilets. You use a lot of water. Just because you're making your indoor budget based on a lot of indoor water use, that's not necessarily an efficient water use. Whereas we know exactly that with current efficient technologies, each person should be using around 40 gallons per person indoors per day. So that's why, that lowest one is a real exact measure of efficiency, because if we know the number of people in the home, we know how much water they should be using. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. The other question I had was, this is with respect to single-family detached. Where does single-family attached, like townhomes or duplexes, fall into this mix?
So the rate structure that we're talking about here would be effective for anyone that currently pays under the 3-tier structure. So that's all single-family detached homes, and it is some portion of single-family attached homes, the ones that have been built from 2020-ish forward, where we have required individual meters for attached products. We have housing stock that was built prior to that, where there's a meter for 5 units. Those are not billed under the 3-tier structure. So a duplex would be another one, or a paired home, also charged under this kind of budget. Is currently charged under the 3-tier structure, would also be applicable for a budget.
Yeah, that's helpful. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm remembering multifamily dwellings, so those households pay a higher water rate than single family. Is that correct?
Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Brian Donahue, Policy and Budget Office, that is correct. So the multifamily rate pays higher than the single-family detached rate. It's a fixed rate right now, but that's something we recognize that we need to scope out in the next cost of service study. So we are definitely going to pull that multifamily rate out of an irrigation class, and it will be its own class with some level lower than what's being paid today.
Okay, thank you, because that was so going into my next question for consideration in this cost study, because I know that we have a lot of people living in multifamily and townhomes, and I wanted to clarify, what really those homes were. So that was helpful to understand where these rates apply or don't. So yeah, I would be a fan of seeing us integrate this analysis into the rate analysis, or the cost study, I'm sorry. The questions I would have as part of that would be to kind of distinguish how might we address the rates for all classes of dwellings, and I was sensitive to the multifamily being higher. Two, I'd like to understand, as you've presented these different structures, which of them might help us plan long-term better for our conservation, for our water supply management. So is there a structure that kind of informs us more versus not? 'Cause, as we're trying to use less water and we're trying to really track and get stringent on conservation. So that'd be one thing to look at. And for those that have implemented this, how is their conservation going? Is this helping or hindering that for their communities? That's where I'd be at with those.
Drew, can you speak to conservation for those that have implemented?
In general, folks find that, so the hedge here is that as Chris was saying, the more sophisticated, the more expensive, the more accurate the budget becomes, the better it does at teaching the folks how much water they should use. So it's kind of hard because, as you saw, there's a lot of different variety in what people end up choosing. So if you live in Thornton, your budget is based just on your lot size, whether or not you have a large house on a small lot or you have a small house on a small lot, right? You'd use different amounts of water outdoors, but your budget is the same. So that's one end. The other end, in Castle Rock, they look at exactly how much of your yard is grass versus bushes versus tree, and the budget is very specific to how much you should use. So I would expect in Castle Rock, you're probably getting a more responsive conservation message to your customers than if you lived in Thornton. But it's really hard to say writ large, given the variety of all the structures and what we would choose if we did it all here in Westminster.
I think that as the part of the analysis would just be an understanding of, again, how does that help or hinder our long-term goal of living within our water budget and improving conservation? Thanks.
Councilor Dumont?
I appreciate the time and effort put into this. I will say for me, it's missed the mark because we've been talking about this for years now, and we're still hearing about what other people are doing, not about what we could do. Now the question is, should we even be looking at this? And I thought we were looking at this all this time, so I'm a tad frustrated. But no matter what direction we go, to be honest, well, one question first. Do we even know what the average cost is in these other cities? We're talking about how they're working and that it's going to be more expensive, but I'm not hearing what the average cost of a bill is. And I have plenty of people who I know who've moved out of the city of Westminster, specifically moved into Thornton, and they, have shared that their bills went down. That could be for a variety of reasons. They could have a different yard size, a lot of different things. But what I'm not hearing is like what is that actual cost to the consumer? And maybe we don't know that, but that's missing from the presentation for me. And I think, from the get-go on council back in 2018 when we started looking at increasing rates and then decrease rates, I've made the case multiple times, just as you do here, that the sword cuts both ways. And I think that's where I think that we're missing the mark about our approach. Because the approach should be, yes, how do we pay for our infrastructure? How do we maintain it, but try to keep it affordable for the people who live here? And when I read, if it goes down for one, it must go up for somebody else, so we're just going to take it from somebody else's pocket. So how do we, instead of just always looking at it that the cost is going to go up when it goes down, what are we doing to drive down the cost of our utility? And I understand there are so many factors outside of the control of anybody in this room or the city, but that still would be the right approach in my mind. Because Conservancy is another place where multiple times I've said that is going to hurt us in some ways. It's great because we want to conserve. We only have so much water. We're not, we want to figure out how we best utilize that water. But at the same time, think about in terms of what we're doing as a city to be leaders in Conservancy by pulling turf out of our parks. It's going to come out of the residents' pockets. And they're going to lose grass. So, I just hope at some point we start thinking about it in those terms, not just in the terms of what is the reality that we do have to pay for it. I understand that, but what are we trying to do to be leaders in not just this, but figuring out how we do that affordably for our residents? Because every time I hear one of these presentations, and I know it's not the goal, but all I hear is this is going to go up for the residents. And I know to some extent it always is going to. That's, not reality to think that as costs go up on us, we're not going to have to get that cost from somewhere. But to me, it's just the approach is the same as what we've done. And I don't think that that's going to get us to a place that's sustainable, both from a rate structure, or for our efforts. The other thing that I will say that I did like was that we really pointed out what the bill is. And I think that's been one of the things that pretty much every council I've served with has been really harped on. Like, people should understand what exactly is on that bill. And I think that we probably still have some room to refine it even better. But I think that we've done a good job over, the last handful of years to let people know that's not just your water. That's more than your water. And those other costs are going up on us, especially when it comes in terms of roads. And we've done a substantial amount of investment on the sewer side of the house in my time as well. So I don't mean that's to be negative. I just, want us to think about, our approach and the lens that we look at this, because, and not everybody's going to look at it the way I do, but that's the way I look at it. It's not that we don't have to do all these things, but, as we try to conserve, I think that's the right thing. But how do we do it in a way that it's not just meaning, okay, the city pulled out a couple hundred acres of grass, now we got to figure out where that water or where that cost comes from. what are we doing to try to drive down those costs so that they don't exist?
Counselor, I appreciate you sharing that frustration. I think that was some of the concern that staff had with the presentation this evening. So it doesn't make the utility cost less by implementing this, and I think that's where you're at. And as I think about this, the overwhelming majority of the cost to operate a safe and compliant utility are costs that go up year after year after year. Personnel, electric and gas, chemicals, there's regulatory requirements that are implemented that then we're adding additional costs to. And I think that's some of the concern with changing our rate structure. I can assure you that staff is doing everything we can to drive down the operational costs of the utility, but some of these we have to do. Many of these we have to do. And they don't, it doesn't therefore meet what you're looking for, which is a lower cost across the utility.
Well, I think that makes sense, but I guess, to just kind of other side of that is, and again, this is where it cuts two ways. So say, for example, everybody in the city gets low-flow toilets. Okay, we're selling less water. The utility, to your point, isn't getting any cheaper to run. So what's the benefit to the residents to not use the water? I got less grass, on my toilets. So and I don't know the right answer for it. So, I hear where you're coming from. I just think that we need to continually think about that, because I do think, to your point of people costs, yeah, I'm glad that we are able to employ people who really enjoy working for the city. That's a good thing, but how are we utilizing today's technology to have less of the workforce? I think that there is room, especially in the situation where we're building a new water plant. How is that water plant going to be that much more efficient that it takes less people to run, that it takes less energy to run? Those costs, again, to your point, go up every year, but we should really be just pushing the envelope on that as much as we can in a safe manner that, is meeting all the compliances that we need to meet, but always having that, how can we do it different because we have an opportunity to do it, in not just for tomorrow, but for 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that we just make that kind of part of how we do it. And I think that, to me, that would be a big win, even if it doesn't necessarily drive down costs tomorrow, because I think long term, that will keep the costs lower, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And ultimately, I think that that's our biggest, where we're at right now, I think that's our biggest opportunity. That's not something maybe anybody in this room will be able to touch, but I think it's still, the right thing for us to try to do.
Well, I was looking to see if John McConnell was still in the room, but just wanted to add another piece that I learned in the CAT we recently held on Wednesday. To your point on how can we reduce cost, a piece that I learned on the new building to reduce significant costs, I forget how much they said, but a very large, multi-millions, was they took the campus and they are putting the buildings together. So they're taking all the many buildings, and by putting together, they're saving a lot of money on materials and on utilities and all the rest. And so just wanted to give a small, acknowledgement there, and that will save us millions in the long term. So by the way, that's happening too. So to your point, we can become more efficient, and I am always for how can we do things more efficiently and use technology to our advantage. That is very important. And they're starting to look at that at the architecture, at least starting there. My first question was, how much do we think that the implementation itself would cost? And obviously it depends on the format, but we did mention that, the changing this to begin with has a cost. And so I'm just trying to get roughly an idea at all of what we think that is. Is that in the thousands? Like, oh, you just do, some, I don't know, some software changes, or is it in the millions, or is it, what is the implementation itself to just do a change? What is that?
So I think, again, it depends upon the structure. and the manner in which we set this up, but we've seen costs and can estimate costs being between $300,000 and potentially up to $1 million of one-time cost to implement something like this.
That's good to have a range, though. That's helpful. That gives me an idea. Okay. And then, I guess what I don't see, or if there's a way to know from the towns that we looked at, is there any way to get a poll of resident satisfaction under the method that they're using?
I don't know, but we can look into that.
That would be nice before we start. And then I guess my question, I think it's already been answered, is under any of these specific methods, do residents usually save?
Counselor, do you mean save money, save water, save what?
Dollars.
Dollars. Yeah, so the big shift in moving towards a water budget-based rate structure is that high water use today, 50,000, 60,000 gallons of water per month, is charged at a very high rate because anything over $40,000 gets tier 3. So we're purely based on volume of use. Under a budget structure, if you had a large lot and a large yard, we would want you to use the efficient amount of water for your property. That may happen to be a large amount of water, but we would only charge you at like the tier 2 rate because you're being efficient for your property. So probably the biggest change that would happen here in Westminster is that the annual bills for large lot property owners would go down.
Okay.
And we'll couple that with the statement prior, if they go down for one group, they will go up for a different group. And that group, under a budget-based structure, are water wasters. You're using more water than you should. You're irrigating 5 days a week instead of 3. You're running your sprinkler system for 50 minutes instead of 30. It's really hard for us to tell right now who those water wasters are, who would go up under a change of a budget structure like this. But that would be part of the cost of service study, would analyze all of our accounts, would give us a sort of an idea of who would go up and who would go down.
Understood. Okay. Thank you. And then to Mayor Pro Tem's point, I just think that seeing as so much of the city is in, multifamily homes and HOAs, et cetera, and they're at a flat rate, I'd just like to see how does that fit into this picture? It seems like this is, I'll put it in a clearer question. Does this plan only affect single-use homes or single residential homes?
So let me clarify. The multifamily rate and the issue that we have there will be addressed in the cost of service study, regardless of a decision on water budget-based rate structures. So that's an identified concern that we have that we'll work on with the cost of service study. The water budget-based structure would be for single-family residences.
Is anything we're talking about today concerning commercial estates in the city? No.
Can you be a commercial estate?
Commercial, like commercial businesses.
A commercial business. Well, commercial water rate would be addressed under the cost of service study, just like multifamily, just like irrigation.
Yeah.
They're a separate customer
But
class.
not through potential change from tier 3 to a water budget-based structure.
So they would still be under our tiers that we currently have.
We have 2 tiers for the commercial class right now. So essentially, they get what's called a service commitment agreement, an allotment of water based on what they use in their class. So a restaurant getting more water than, let's say, an office. So if they go over that service commitment, they do pay a surcharge for that water. But this type of budget-based billing would be for single-family detached products.
Okay. And what makes me ask that is because I've heard from some new businesses that, water rates are high I've heard that from a cafe and from, anyway, so, okay. So this is affecting residents only, and this is, okay.
Essentially one class.
Right.
And we have 5 classes of customers right now,
Right.
currently. But we will certainly look at all the classes during the cost of service study and what makes sense for their cost to provide service today versus what it was, let's say, 6 or 7 years ago.
Thank you. And so this cost study is being done, it's already approved, no matter what, for all 5 tiers, or for all 5 classes, right? Is that right?
We will be requesting budget through the annual budget process to move forward with
To
that
make that
beginning in
happen.
2025. But
Okay.
correct, staff is scoping that out through the rest of this year.
Got it. Okay, so we'll be addressing these concerns, it sounds like, 1 class at a time, or so.
The cost of service and rate study addresses all the classes, all 5 of the classes. I think separate from that equation is whether or not we want to add to the scope of that the water budget-based rate structure discussion, or continue with the 3-tier residential.
Appreciate that. Okay.
And that's usually a decision made before going into a cost of service study. If you want to remain into the tier structure, that goes into the cost of study scope. If you want a cost or water budget-based structure, that would go into the scope for the cost of service study for the residential class.
I think that answers all of my questions. Thank you very much. And just for FYI, it does help me. As you can see, I think through enough of these evenings, I really like just a high level, here's where we are, this is where we are in the picture, here's the branch of where we are. It helps me, but we'll get there eventually. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to be clear, we're not deciding which structure to use tonight. We're deciding what to add into the study.
Whether to add this particular budget rate structure
Okay.
into the study.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm really clear on what we're deciding. I think more information is better. My biggest concern is there are multiple ways in a suburban area that people with the least amount are subsidizing the people with the most amount. One of those areas is taxes, for example, property taxes. You take an apartment building with many people, that's a multi-million-dollar building. The property taxes, because it's on a percentage, are much, much more, pay for much more services than a single-family home. Single-family homes, the taxes don't generally cover the services, but the multifamily developments do. So I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing, that we are not taking more from the people who have less to subsidize the people who have more. And that's my big concern.
Counselor Azadi?
Yes. I just want to say that we need urgent, targeted relief for low and fixed income in terms of water relief, water cost relief. So how can we lower water costs on a targeted basis? We have fixed income folks, low income folks that need it the most. That's that's on one side. On the other side, we also need to make sure that we sustain long-term financial health. We're building out a new water plant. That's expensive. We don't want to put our city into too much debt to pay for it. So I understand the balancing act that staff is trying to go through. But I think we can do both. You know, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And we need to make sure, though, that we just stay focused on that, because that's really what we're trying to do here, is lower water costs while sustaining our city long term. So if this plan that you presented might do that, then I'm okay with throwing that into the study, because I think that that cost of service study is the first step. So this is probably a little too premature to even have this discussion. So the way that I think things through, I think that cost of service study should have been first, because there's a lot of outcomes of that we need to know before we can decide if we want to change the structure of the water. But I'm good either way. I just want to make sure that we stay focused on that cost of service study, because I think that's the key. Seeing the current state, seeing where the gaps are, seeing how we can lower costs for multifamilies and those sorts of things. That's much more important to figure out first, and then we can decide the actual structure. So if staff is asking this before that, because you need to help build that analysis out, then sure. But if staff is recommending, and sorry, what is the recommendation from staff? Do you have a recommendation?
They're asking, there are two options. Evaluate water budget-based rate structures as part of the upcoming cost of service and rate study, or take no further action to pursue this particular option.
Yes, but my question is, does staff have a recommendation?
Counselor,
It sounds,
Counselor Mark Freitag, I would tell you that we're happy to go down either path, but since this was brought up by the council to evaluate from our previous budget discussion, property-based billing, we thought that this would be an appropriate time to educate, ask the council's opinion, so that if we need to move forward with this, that we can roll it into the rate study. Because if we don't roll it into the rate study, we really don't get the level of expertise that we need to. And oh, by the way, at the end of the day, we're still asking that question. So, I don't have a recommendation. We can go either way. But if we want to take a look at this, this would be the opportunity to roll this in to the scope of that work.
yeah, so as long as taking a look at this doesn't then exclude the current structure, right? I'm fine with throwing this in, if that's the question.
And it would not, so. It's okay.
Counselor Ireland?
Hi. So I would like to know what cost to implement each scenario that you presented. It appears to me the Thornton one would be the most simple and the cheapest going forward. So I would like to know the cost of implementing these budget conscious water structures for billing. Also, I want to know if HOAs can be included in this, because I feel like 65% of the residents of our city are being docked twice. They have their water bill and then they have their HOA water bill. Also, when you gave the water bill, there was no meter charge there. That needs to be part of it. But going forward, I would be on board to have this as part of our analysis of our water rates, and what each one of them would cost to implement. And I'm kind of leaning toward the Thornton scenario because I think it's the least discriminatory. I think everyone is urged to conserve in that scenario, and it's not just based arbitrarily on lot sizes, and allows for the city, everyone to keep their lawn alive. So that's the one I'm for, but I'd like to hear what it would cost to implement any of those and all of those things.
Any answers for HOAs or whatever?
I don't think we have those answers tonight, do we?
On the HOA side, Councilor Ireland, many utilities do water budgets for irrigation-only accounts. It's obviously much more straightforward because you're not dealing with people in the home. But water budgets for HOAs are a different kind of rate structure that other utilities look at, use.
Councilor Ireland, I do want to clarify you asked about the dollar bill figure towards the beginning. The water. Right.
Sorry, my audio wasn't working.
The water.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I want to know why HOAs pay at a almost commercial rate, because they're not commercial entities or actual homeowners. So I'm concerned with that. And there's many HOAs that are struggling to take care of their properties whether it be pass or otherwise, because of their water rates. So I think it would make our whole city look better if we allowed HOAs to have the same rates as residential customers, so they could use the money to upgrade some other things in their HOAs.
Councilor Ireland, when we talk about the HOA rate, it's a true irrigation rate, and that particular rate places more demand on the system, and why it's rated at a higher price point in its class. So if you think about a residential property, single-family detached product, that product places less demand on the overall system. And that's why that pricing is higher for that particular class, which comes out of the cost of service study.
Okay, well, that's all fine and good, but HOAs and the Uplands projects that you have approved, those people down the road are gonna have to take care of all these alleys and I think our city needs to look about how they treat HOAs and the financial stability of some of them going forward.
Did you want to update on the dollar?
Yeah,
percent?
Councillor Ireland, I was saying that the dollar image that you asked about, so the water meter fee is rolled into the water percentage that was reflected on that diagram. It was included.
Okay, thank you.
For me, since I got back here in 2021, and we started immediately looking at rates and whatnot, what we came up with to relieve what had caused so much of the upheaval in the city, we didn't say was going to be forever. We knew it needed to be looked at. I have no idea if we've continued to look at it or not. I have said often, simply educate people. We use Facebook and our website and whatnot. Give approximate sizes, like in Sheridan Green, we have pretty much the same size. The people in the cul-de-sac maybe have a little bit more, somebody that's along a curve has a little bit more, but those homes are pretty much the same size. How often are they to water? 2 times a week, 3 times a week? How long? How much actual water should go on that to be a good, strong yard, not one that you water every day and the roots never go deep. We haven't done a great job of educating so people know, and they have to go other places to find that out. I think quick videos, anything to help people be able to get to the resources. Young people that come into the neighborhood have no clue. They go to those of us that have been there a while, asking questions. That's terrific, but we need, if you're going to be charging whatever, then you need to be sharing what your specifications are and what you see as the best water practices that we can all do. And I have not seen that anywhere. So that frustrates me. But most of all, I have no clue if you've looked at the current structure and what needs to be tweaked. Does it need to be tweaked? Did we do too much going down to 3 tiers? I don't know. That's your guys' expertise, not mine. And the water structure that we're looking at is one thing we can look at, but there's so many others. So I don't know what to say tonight for where I'm at, because I think there's some things that the last 2 years could have been being done that we start over doing.
Mayor,
Councilor Demott?
can I respond to one item? So the impact of the changes that councils have made in recent years is one of the key reasons that we need to do a cost of service study. So the previous cost of service study set a rate path that we then moved away from. So we need to go back and look at the input that we've gotten from council and go back and look at the cost of providing service and then what an appropriate rate structure should be to come back with rate recommendations to council.
So then to me, it's not just doing one thing. If you want to get the most efficient, you should be doing several things so that we give our citizens the best that we can give them at the least amount. I say often, we're not a monopoly, and people have to have water. We're also turning into the gray tsunami. They aren't going to use as much water. And if you have, it's a conundrum. If it rains for 2 months solid, or close to it, and nobody waters, you're in a fix because you aren't getting money because nobody's using water. So it's like, I wake up at nights trying to figure out what's the answer, because it's almost as if we're charging the wrong thing, because if you don't use it, then we're in the hole. If you do use it, people have to pay through the nose. It's mind-boggling. Councilor DeMott.
So on that note, and this is what terrifies me about this all, is what you said, Mr. Lindsay. I hate to say it, but I was here when we were on the path from that last rate structure, and it was going to bankrupt people. It was going to make more people move. Maybe not bankrupt, that might be extreme, but it was hurting people. And that's what I said in 2018. You can go listen to my comments. I said, this is going to hurt people. And I hate to say that I was right, but I was right. It did hurt people. And if we go back to that same kind of rate structure, we're going to go through this all over again. So what I do hope that we do through this is take the lessons learned. And I think the biggest lessons learned were that we thought that the way the tiers were going to hit people were going to hit people who were overusing. That is not what happened. And I think that that's the problem in a city of our size that we have. Even with what we did with, and to the mayor's point, to relieve this, we increased that third tier. Some people wanted to do away with that third tier. I wasn't on board with doing away with that because I do think that there should be some stopgap that says you're overusing. But the problem with the way that it is now, somebody like me, I could be overusing, and I'm still not going to hit that third tier because I have a very small yard in the front, and I've decreased my lawn in my backyard to maybe under a quarter of my yard, just enough for my animals. So, we have to figure out if, in general, with the rate study and whatever we're going to do forward, how do you have something that allows there to be a line where it shows people that they are overusing or gets charged for that in a lot size like mine, but doesn't penalize somebody in some of the big lots in historic Westminster, who is just trying to maintain a yard that was built the way it was built before they probably even ever bought the home. And so I think that you have to look at those tiers somehow. I mean, I'm curious, like I know we've talked before, like how many people are going into that third tier still? And, how do we judge, is that because they're really overusing, or is because, they're still kind of in a big enough lot that, they're just trying to reasonably maintain it? And I know that's a difficult thing, but if we're ever going to get to a place where this is really fair and equitable, we're going to have to do that work. And I don't know that any of these are going to hit that perfectly, but you got to have some way to say that this land, that was zoned this way, that was allowed to be developed this way, can maintain itself without being penalized as though they're misusing water. Because I don't think that that's fair to say, oh, this house that was built this way in 1980, that this person who's now retired is all of a sudden, is misusing their water when they're doing probably the same thing they did 20 years ago. Maybe there are better ways, to the mayor's point, to educate them, but I mean, if we don't do that, we're going to end up just back where we were in 2019 and having people who are upset because, they're just trying to maintain their property. So I don't know what that, that necessarily fits in one of these things. But I mean, we have to do that work in my mind. Otherwise, we're just going to end up in the same place.
Could I make a clarification that I think would help the conversation tonight? So the plan right now is to, later this fall, scope out a cost of service and rate study that looks at our current 5 classes of water distribution.
Customers.
The customer base, right?
Customer base.
So that's moving forward, and that would be scoped late 2024 and, essentially executed in 2025 for implementation then in 2026, correct?
26, 27.
26, 27. So that's the current plan. What we're asking you for tonight is in response to the question from our budget session and discussions last year, where, folks asked, well, what about this newfangled thing called property-based billing? And so we've looked at that and said, and done research, and I applaud the staff for all the research that they've done to get us to this point. But the question is do you want to add, and we're not calling it property-based billing, we're calling it budget rate structure. Do you want to add that review as part of, as a supplement to, as an add-on to the cost of service and rate study? That's really the question at hand. To me, that would make a lot of sense if you believe, as Councilor DeMott has suggested tonight, that we got to look at all of these options and figure out how do we make water affordable. Because if you don't do it, you're never going to know. You're just never going to know. And so it seems to me, and I told Councilor Azadi, we're not making a recommendation, but it does seem to me that we would want to explore all of these options. And so therefore, pursuing this as an add-on to that cost of service and rate study certainly makes sense to me. But you all have to be the ones to say you're interested in looking at that additional set of options, if you will.
I'll just go ahead and voice my opinion because I've been holding on to that piece. To your point and to Councilor DeMott's point, I think that I think this decision is painful for all of us because we're saying we have to spend money, right, to get to a better rate structure, that's hard. But I think that, to your point, you're correct, that if we want to get the data, and I also think that, if we want to get to more equitable property pricing, we're probably going to have to do this study. So from that point of view, I am for adding this. I think that it's a smart idea to add this to the cost study. I'm also hoping that through this process, we can get some more of residents' buy-in, and hopefully they'll feel some more ownership if we do have some town halls around this, or some, if we get their opinion around what they would prefer to have, that buy-in could be valuable. I'm hoping that it doesn't go the other way. And so, I think that we're all a little nervous about this whole piece of it, so I think that can be understood. But I think it makes sense that this has to be done, most likely, to get to a better place than we're in.
Do we have 4 that want us to add this in?
Councilor DeMott?
We'll say I've spent 6 years trying to make us do something different, so I am all in on us figuring out how we learn from the last go-around at this and figure out what a better path forward is that's sustainable for both our residents and our infrastructure.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, and to the questions that I wanted to have with respect to how does it impact our conservation over time, I just want the pros and cons with it.
Councilor Hart?
Yes, but like Mayor Pro Tem said, I would like it to, something there around equitability. You know what word I'm trying to say, and it's not coming out.
Councilor Azadi, I have you down as a yes, correct?
Yes, and thank you to staff for pulling this together.
And Councilor Ireland?
Yes, I'm for it. And just to let you know, the population of Westminster has dropped 3% since 2020. So we're losing residents, and I think water's a big factor. So I hope we can come to something that keeps our city looking better than it has been. Thanks.
You have 7 people saying, bring it back.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
We have reason for executive sessions.
We do, Mayor, and actually before reading the two titles, I would ask for a motion to allow for remote participation for both Councilors Azadi and Ireland.
Counselor Dumont.
I would make a motion to allow remote participation for everybody in Ireland.
Mayor Pro Tem seconds. I'll just go around the room and you say aye. Nancy McNally, aye.
Sarah Nermella, aye.
Dave Demott, yes.
Claire Carmelia, yes.
Amber Hot, aye.
Counselor Zadi.
Yes.
Counselor Ireland. Did she already get off and?
No, she's here.
She said she was having audio troubles.
Oh, yeah. she-
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, thanks. Now, you guys will have to jump off and get on a different, oh, wait.
First, before you drop off, we have two titles for tonight's exec sessions. While we're still in the open meeting, I would ask for council to take a vote as to whether or not you want to enter into the first exec session, which is to discuss a successor collective bargaining, to discuss successor collective bargaining agreements, plural, between the City of Westminster and Westminster Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 25 and the Westminster Professional Firefighters IAFF Local 2889 to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators pursuant to CRS 246402-4E and Westminster Municipal Code 1113C7.
Is there a motion to do executive session A? Mayor Pro Tem moves.
I second.
There's Counselor Carmelia seconds. All those in favor, or no? Go around, state your name, and say that you're willing to go into executive session, and you'll keep things confidential. Nancy McNally, yes?
Sarah Nermella, yes.
Dave Demott, yes.
Claire Carmelia, yes.
Amber Hot, yes.
Counselor Azadi?
Yes.
Counselor Ireland?
Christine Ireland, yes.
So, thank you, Mayor. And prior to adjourning the open session, I'd ask for a motion on the second exec session, which is for a discussion of a personnel matter, the goal setting specific to the city manager pursuant to Westminster Municipal Code 1113C1 and Colorado Revised Statute 246402-4F1.
Is there a motion for executive session B? Mayor Pro Tem?
I second.
Moved and seconded. Again, go around and state that you're willing to go into executive session. We'll hold things confidential. Nancy McNally, yes?
Sarah Nermella, yes.
Dave Demott, yes.
Claire Carmelia, yes.
Amber Hot, yes.
Counselor Azadi?
Obi Zadi, yes.
Counselor Ireland?
Christine Ireland, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. So at this time, 9:27 PM, if you wish to adjourn the open session for tonight, we can then end the webcast and start a separate recording for the executive session number 1.
Study session is done and it's 9:28.